Today's lesson is Mysterious Structures of the Ancients, Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And today we're going to continue talking about these two ancient sites, one in Turkey, one in England. They're kind of similar in that they have these stones arranged in circles. And so that's kind of why we're talking about them in today's program and why we talked about them in our last program. Speaking of which, our last program discussed the place in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, and I was glad to have learned about that myself because I really didn't know much about it. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was all about.
Right, and this ancient site was able to give archaeologists a new view about the old hunter-gatherer society where we used to think that people were just running around by themselves hunting, but because of this site, Göbekli Tepe, it actually suggests that different groups of people would actually come together and hold special ceremonies and perform rituals together.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising, but it looks like humans were doing that thousands of years ago. And again, this site has stone pillars arranged in circles. And of course, as you said, it looks like they were participating in communal activities, in ceremonies, and religious rituals. So that's quite amazing to find out. And who knows what else we'll find as they continue to excavate the site. Now we're going to go some thousands of miles away from Turkey to England there. And we're going to talk about Stonehenge in today's lesson. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson, and we'll come back to discuss it.
Located more than 3,000 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe in southern England, Stonehenge is another mysterious ancient structure that provides an interesting view into the lives of people from the distant past. Unlike Göbekli Tepe, however, Stonehenge was constructed much later, around 3000 BC, and is somewhat smaller in scale.
All right, let's talk about the Stonehenge. It's located more than 3,000 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, which is in Turkey, and now we've come to southern England. Stonehenge is another mysterious ancient structure that provides an interesting view into the lives of people from the distant past.
Exactly. So again, we're talking about the location of Stonehenge. It's located more than 3,000 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe. Now, moving on to the next sentence, it says, unlike Göbekli Tepe, however, Stonehenge was constructed much later, around 3000 BC, and is somewhat smaller in scale. So Göbekli Tepe is the older of the two structures. It's actually thousands of years older than Stonehenge, but still Stonehenge is pretty old, and it was constructed later than Göbekli Tepe. So if you build something, you construct that thing.
Right, and that comes to the end of part 1. Let's listen to part 2.
Today, only part of the original structure remains, but the ruins clearly show that it was composed of an inner and outer ring of stones. There were about 160 stones in total, many of which were 4 meters tall and 2 meters wide. Some of them were brought from over 480 kilometers away and must have taken substantial effort to transport. No one is exactly sure how or why the ancient architects hauled them from such a distance to create this special place.
大家好，我们来看第二部分中的单字 substantial。它是形容词，意思是相当程度的、大量的或是可观的。例如 As the lead character, Kara has a substantial role in the play. 作为主角 Kara 在该剧中为重要角色。或者 The company took out substantial loans to cover its losses. 该公司贷了一大笔钱来填补亏损。另外在这个字的字尾加上 ly 就会变成副词 substantially， 指的是大大的或是本质上的。例如 Eric has substantially more money than I do, but he isn't happier than me. Eric 比我富有得多，但他并不比我快乐。也可以说 The baseball team will be substantially different due to the loss of several players. 由于失去几名球员，该棒球队将从根本上有很大的改变。下一个是 architect 这个名词，它的意思是建筑师或是设计师、创造者。例如 Good architects work closely with their clients to create the perfect home. 优秀的建筑师会与客户们密切合作，打造完美的家园。或是 A famous architect was hired to build the millionaire's new mansion. 一位著名的建筑师被聘请来建造那位百万富翁的新豪宅。另外，补充这个字的形容词 architectural, A-R-C-H-I-T-E-C-T-U-R-A-L, architectural, 表示建筑上的或是建筑学的。举例来说 The temple's architectural design features an elegant symmetry. 这座庙宇的建筑设计以雅致的对称性为特色。再来介绍动词 haul， 它的意思是用力的拖或是拉。可以说 After cutting down the tree, the men hauled the huge log out of the forest. 在砍倒那棵树后，男人们把那根巨大的原木从森林里拖了出来。下一个例子 The horses hauled the heavy cart up the hill. 马匹拉着沉重的货车上山。
Okay, in part 2, it begins by saying, today, only part of the original structure remains, but the ruins clearly show that it was composed of an inner and outer ring of stones. So, yes, we can only see part of the original structure. That's the only part that remains. It's the only part that's still there. But again, we're describing Stonehenge as being ruins. Ruins are things that are left over from thousands of years ago, and they're not in their original shape. I would not call the old Japanese structures in Taiwan as ruins. They're kind of old structures. Ruins are things that are many thousands of years old, and they're not in their complete shape anymore. You can see various ruins, for example, in different parts of the world that were built by ancient people, and they're still there, but they're not in their perfect shape.
So the ruins clearly show that it was composed of an inner and outer ring of stones. So this site, this Stonehenge site, it was made up of an inner and outer rings of stones. So there were two different circles. It was composed of or made up of two different rings of circles, an inside ring and an outside ring of stones, okay? And there were about 160 stones in total, many of which were 4 meters tall and 2 meters wide.
They're quite big, and of course they can tell by surveying the ground and looking at the ground, they can tell that at one time there were about 160 of those stones in total, and lots of them were quite tall, 4 meters tall and 2 meters wide. And, of course, they had to bring them from far away. Some of those stones were brought from over 480 kilometers away and must have taken substantial effort to transport. So you're taking a guess about what happened in the past. So you'd use this kind of structure here, must have done or must have taken, because you don't really know. Like John's cat died. Oh, he must have been very sad when that happened. You're imagining this as having happened in the past. You're not 100% sure, but you're making an educated guess. So they're thinking that it must have taken a great amount of effort to transport those stones over such a long distance. And here, substantial just means a great quantity of something. Indeed, it must have required lots and lots of work, and it probably took dozens of years, if not hundreds of years, to complete.
Right. If we think about the site of Stonehenge, it's kind of on a plains, right? Around it, there's not a lot of big stones or boulders or rocks, a lot of grass, right? So it suggests that they don't have a lot of big stones. So it must have come from very far where they got these stones. But no one is exactly sure how or why the ancient architects hauled them from such a distance to create this special place. So nobody knows exactly why these ancient people or these ancient architects went through so much trouble to bring these giant rocks all the way over to this site. So an architect is basically a person who is qualified to design buildings and to plan and supervise the construction of it. Okay, so modern day, if you want to be an architect, you need to study the engineering parts of building a construction, a site. If it's a building or a bridge, anything that needs to be built, you need to be an architect and you need to be qualified. But back then, these architects, they didn't have these architect licenses or anything, but they were still able to build these amazing, beautiful, and massive sites.
And no one, again, is exactly sure why or how the ancient architects hauled them from such a distance to create this special place. So they thought, we want to build this structure using a certain kind of rock, but there are no rocks like that in this area, so we have to figure out a way to bring those rocks from far away to this location. And here they had to figure out a way to haul those rocks from such a great distance. What does haul mean, Kiki?
When you haul something, it is to drag or pull something very big or heavy and to move it from one place to another. So usually we're describing something that we have to move, but it's sometimes very impossible or very hard to move. That's when you're hauling something. So, for example, we can say that Santa had to haul his big bag of presents for all the kids all over the world.
To haul, to basically move something that's very heavy, as you said, and they needed to haul those stones from a great distance. It was truly amazing. It must have taken them a long time to build. Okay, we're at the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's finish things up now by talking about the final part.
As with Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists take the view that Stonehenge was built for important ceremonial or religious reasons. Part of the evidence for this is that the stones in Stonehenge appear to align with the sunrise on the longest day of the year and the sunset on the shortest. But we may never know exactly why or how the site was used. In other words, the mysteries of Stonehenge, like those of Göbekli Tepe, are likely to endure.
第三部分来介绍 evidence 这个名词，意思是证据或是证明。例如 The police released Karen when they found no evidence of her involvement in the crime. 警察在查无 Karen 涉案的证据后，便释放了她。或是 We found evidence of bear activity near the campsite. 我们发现露营区附近有熊活动的证据。最后是动词 align， 表示使成一直线或是对准对齐的意思。例如 When decorating her house, Daphne aligned her collection of teddy bears perfectly with each other. Daphne 布置她的房子时，把她收藏的泰迪熊一个个排得很整齐。再看一个例子 The carpenter aligned the two holes so that he could screw the two pieces of wood together. 木匠把两个洞对准，好用螺丝把那两片木板锁在一起。
We've learned about Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge. Let's find out how these sites have changed the minds of archaeologists. As with Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists take the view that Stonehenge was built for important ceremonial or religious reasons. Okay, so as with or just like Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists take the view or they believe or to have the opinion that Stonehenge was also built for important ceremonial or for religious reasons. So they agree, they think that both sites have similar purposes, which were to gather people for ceremonies or to do different religious rituals.
Exactly. So this sentence begins with as with. That just means just like. So just like Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists think, or they consider, that Stonehenge was built for important ceremonial or religious reasons. They look at it and they think, yeah, why else would you build a structure like that? It doesn't look like you could actually live in that structure. They must have built it for some kind of ceremony or religious rituals or things like that. Now, part of the evidence for this is that the stones in Stonehenge appear to align with the sunrise on the longest day of the year and the sunset on the shortest. So, yes, indeed, this is evidence here. They're thinking, yeah, why would they have built these structures for ceremonial or religious reasons? Well, if you take a look at the alignment of the rocks, how they're positioned, how they're placed, you can see that the sun shines between certain stones during the summer solstice and during the winter solstice. And so therefore they must have built this as some sort of maybe observatory or something like that, or because they probably believed in astrology and things like that. They thought it was some way to predict the future or things like that.
So for archaeologists to share the same view that both sites were built for a certain reason, they needed some type of proof or evidence so that they can back up these views or their opinions. So evidence is a fact or information that is available to show whether or not something is true. Most of the time, evidence have to be very concrete and physical things that they can show to others so that people can back up their opinion or back up something that they're saying. So in this case, they have seen evidence that these stones in Stonehenge, they appear to align with something. They align with the sunrise and the sunsets on different days of the year. So what does it mean to align something, Roger?
Well, you basically place things in a straight line, okay? So you can align various things. For example, if you go bowling, the machine will align the pins for you to knock them down with the ball. They will set them up in a certain pattern or a certain sequence, a line of something. So again, the stones appear to have been aligned in order to reveal the sunrise on the longest day of the year, which is in late June every year. And of course, the shortest day of the year is in late December. That's the winter solstice. And again, the rocks are aligned so that they reveal the position of the sun on these 2 days in the year.
Okay, so even though we have a lot of evidence that suggests the ceremonies or religious rituals that may happen, we still may never know exactly why or how the site was used. In other words, the mysteries of Stonehenge, like those of Göbekli Tepe, are likely to endure. Okay, so even all of this study, all of these excavations, we still don't really have enough concrete evidence or concrete proof to tell us why these places were built or how they were used. And that's why the mysteries of these sites are likely to endure. So when you endure something, sometimes we talk about enduring pain. So if you get sick or if you get hurt, you are enduring the pain over a long period of time. But in this case, we're talking about the mysteries of these sites staying with us, staying for a long time, because they've been here for thousands of years, right? So the mysteries are probably going to stick with us.
Yeah, and these structures, of course, are all over the world. Some of them we can guess why they were built, like Teotihuacan in Mexico, or the pyramids of the Mayans in Mexico and Guatemala, or Borobudur in Indonesia. We have various ancient sites all over the world. And some of them we can pretty much know why they were built, but other ones we just don't know. It's a big mystery. So, of course, those mysteries are going to endure. They're going to continue on into the future, and it will really give us something to imagine. And lots of people probably come up with different theories about them, and that's why you probably want to go check those places out. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分提到，考古学家认为巨石阵是为了重要的典礼或宗教原因而建造的。那支持这个观点的部分证据是，巨石阵中的石头似乎与一年中白天最长的日出和最短的日落成一直线。好，文中它用到 evidence 来表达证据、证明。我们来学它的字首字根，看到 vid或是 vis 或是 view 这一类的字根呢，表示观看、观察或者是看到。那么在 evidence 这个字当中，它的字首 e 表示外或者是完全，那么字根 vid 表示看， ence 是名词字尾。那我们就可以试着联想啦，把证据完全摊在外面给大家看，让大家看得清清楚楚，眼见为凭，用这样去联想说 evidence 就是指证据、证明的意思。我们顺便补充几个有这一类字根的单字。第一个是 vision， 它的字根 vis 表示看， ion 是名词字尾，那合在一起 vision 就表示视力啊、视觉、眼光，它其实还有想象、展望或愿景的意思。我们在 vision 前面加上字首 en， 会变成动词 envision， 则表示设想、预想、想象、展望。这个字首 en 它有那种使、加诸或是提供的语义。好，第二个补充的是 supervisor，它的字首 super super 表示上方，那么字根 vis 表示观察， or 是名词字尾。这个 or 就是用来表达从事什么什么的人，那从上方来观察查看的人，应该就很容易联想到 supervisor， 它表示主管、监督人或者是管理者的意思。第三个补充的是 preview， 它的字首 pre 表示预先，那么 view 是观看，预先观看应该很容易就联想到 preview， 它有预览、预告、预告片的意思。那么课文句子它有用到说 The stones in Stonehenge appear to 来表达说巨石阵中的石头似乎怎么样怎么样。 appear 在这边是当连缀动词，就跟 seem 一样，用来表达看起来、似乎。那以下介绍几种常见句型。第一种，你可以用主词加上 appear to be， 再加形容词或名词，其中的 to be 可以省略。例如The man appeared to be nervous and suspicious， 或者是 The man appeared nervous and suspicious。 那名男子看起来很紧张又很可疑。第二个句型是主词 appear to 加原形动词，像 He appears to get along well with his teammates， 他看起来跟队友们相处融洽。那第三个句型是 It appears that 主词加动词，像刚刚那个例句就可以改成It appears that he gets along well with his teammates。 好，那么以上就是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Ruin. After hiking through the jungle for several days, the explorers came upon the ruins of an ancient village. Substantial. The substantial raise Ellen recently received at work has enabled her to pay for her mother's operation. Architect. The university's new sports stadium was designed by a famous architect. Haul. It took a few hours, but they finally hauled all the furniture up the stairs into their new apartment. Evidence. The scientists present considerable evidence supporting the theory in their new paper. Endure. Despite some arguments here and there, their friendship has managed to endure through the years.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter for today. The question is, would you rather make a visit to Göbekli Tepe or Stonehenge, and why?
I would actually like to go to both places, but I guess if I have to pick, I think I'd rather take a trip to Göbekli Tepe because it's interesting to see that what we're able to visit is only 5% of the whole site. So that's really interesting, and I want to know what that 5% looks like.
Pretty cool. I think I'd rather go to Göbekli Tepe myself as well. because I've never been to Turkey before. Well, I haven't been to England before for that matter, so maybe I'd rather go to both of these places. But Göbekli Tepe does sound more interesting. Stonehenge just looks like a bunch of big rocks, and it seems kind of dull to me.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.